welcome to Foxy Film Nights. Okay, so this unit was focused on conflict and war. It also included some PTSD representation. The three movies that we're going to be covering are All Quiet on the Western Front, Flags of Our Fathers, and Letters from Iwo Jima. All Quiet on the Western Front focuses on nationalism and joining war because it's right for the country. It's very much a situation of what's best for the entire country versus caring about individuality. It's set in World War I, and it shows trauma while in war and how it affects soldiers from the beginning to the end of the war. It also non-directly commented on the cycle of war, showing our main character, Paul, starting off taking the name tags off of the dead to ending with the child soldier doing the exact same thing after he died. The second film that we covered is Flags of Our Fathers. This film showed nationalism in a country rather than in the soldiers. It shows the aftermath after the war is won. It highlighted 3 soldiers and their experiences with fame and glory after raising the flag. The third movie that we covered was Letters from Iwo Jima. This movie showed nationalism and glory in war through the soldiers and how they went through war in honor for their religion and their emperor. It has a main focus on 2 characters, Saigo, who's an ordinary soldier, and General Kurubayashi, a respected higher-up general who also had a perspective of knowing the good side of Americans. For these last 2 films, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, they were both made by the same filmmakers to show 2 sides of one story. Overall, we'll be ranking them based off of plot and overall favorites.
So for our first movie, Letters to Iwo Jima, I'll be basing it off of, I'll talk about the plot aspects and she'll talk about the favorites. So for plot, the movie was it was a very interesting storyline. It was an idea that one of the most unpatriotic soldiers was one of the very few to survive. And it was both ironic and touching. It showed flashbacks to all the main characters and showed their background. It showed how the general knew Americans and his experience with Americans. It showed soldiers and why they went to war, how they were at the war, stuff like that. It was both touching and serious because it showed a storyline. The main character had a storyline of his wife and baby were at home and he got drafted when his wife was pregnant. And so it kind of showed it made you feel more personal to him because you were seeing his life at home and how he wasn't getting to experience his life at home, and he just wanted to survive to see his wife and the baby that was born while he was there. It really humanized the Japanese during the war, and it showed their perspective of it. Some things that I'd like to mention that it showed was just overall nationalism and the aspect of dying for honor. A lot of them would commit suicide for the sake of they wanted to die for honor. They didn't want to just give up on war, so they chose to die in that way. A lot of them, in a non-national way, surrendered, and it was deemed very bad, and if they got caught trying to surrender, they would end up getting shot. It had it showed the difference between nationalism and being unpatriotic. A lot of the soldiers, they would get heavily criticized for being unpatriotic, so that was something. And then I don't know, just showed a lot of flashbacks to his wife, and then the man with his dog, and the one soldier, the reason he got sent to war because he wouldn't shoot a dog, and it just kind of showed how during that time how rough it was.
It was extreme. It was
it was very extreme. If you didn't follow,
seen as you weren't serving your country, you weren't patriotic for something as not wanting to kill a dog.
It was heavily frowned upon.
Yeah. Okay, so for favorites, Letters from Iwo Jima, I would say was our overall favorite, our number 1. I think it did the best job at keeping my attention the entire time. I actually felt connected to the characters, especially Saigo. It showed, his pregnant wife at home and how it connected it back the entire time. And that left me eager to see if he would ever get back to his wife and his kid. I found that while watching the other movies, I found it hard to follow each character and what was happening the entire time. But with Letters from Iwo Jima, it was pretty clear. I also think it best showed straight-up nationalism and how it affected both an entire nation and its individuals' mindsets surrounding war and sacrifice.
Okay, next up is All Quiet on the Western Front. I personally have seen this movie maybe 4 or 5 times, and what I really like about it is after all those times of seeing it, I still feel the raw emotion of it, and I still feel connected to that movie. My favorite thing that it shows is the cycle. It begins with a man fighting, he has an axe, and the whole beginning is just the war. And then it cuts to a little bit later, like after Paul is in the war, it cuts to him like collecting the tags. And then at the end of the movie, it does the same thing of when Paul dies, it shows a young soldier collecting his tags. So it's kind of neat to see the legacy, but also just how soldiers were actually viewed. They weren't really viewed as people. They were just like almost seen as like robots, like fighting to one thing. Like
it was very much like for our country. It's
Yeah.
more important for our country than for your individual well-being.
Like I feel like they weren't really seen as humans. I also really enjoyed how this. I feel like this one and Flags both showed like the PTSD of war as it's still going on. Like it showed a lot of like throughout it, you would see like Paul reacting to death differently, and when another person would die, you would see how it truly made him feel. So I really enjoyed how authentic it was on actual reactions to war. Like it felt very real and very like what an actual war would be like. Some scenes that I'd like to mention was when there was a moment when Paul killed a guy, well, was attempting to kill a guy in like a ditch, and he immediately felt guilty. I thought that was like really interesting to show like how a soldier like actually feels in a moment like that. Like a lot of the time they're really desensitized to what they're doing, and to see Paul like actually like realize like, oh, I'm killing somebody, like this person is dying because of me, I thought that was interesting. I also think the ending when he was just like when he got shot, not like he didn't get shot, he got stabbed, and when he just like was like crawling out to just see the sky for one last time, it was very interesting and sad to see him accepting his fate.
Yeah. So we would rank All Quiet on the Western Front second. I personally loved how it showed the guilt in the moment, just like you said, with him trying to kill the French guy, but then immediately regrets it and sees how he has a family and a kid, wife waiting at home, and he, yeah, I think it did a really good job at humanizing both sides of the war, even through the German perspective. We see multiple instances of the French and the German soldiers stopping and just like seeing each other as humans, being like, we don't have to kill each other. Like, we don't, okay? And so I think, yeah, especially in the context of a nationalistic country this way, it showed that really well. The only thing I would note as a negative thing was that it was kind of hard to keep track of Paul's friends and their backstories. Like, I could not really differentiate them very well. But overall, I still really liked the movies.
I agree. I also think one thing just to add about that movie, as I liked, it was very realistic. Like I think this is the war in which like on Christmas Day, like they like stopped and like sang together. So I liked that it showed like, even though they didn't specifically put that moment in, I liked that they like overall showed the connection between soldiers. Okay, on to the next one, Flags of Our Fathers. This one, I don't personally know how I feel about it, but for the plot, it just showed different perspectives of three different soldiers and how they were viewing being seen as a hero. So it's set up as these were the soldiers that put up the flag, like that famous picture of the flag going up, but they were the ones that were there, and they wanted like this big bond tour, and like they showed all this stuff, and it just showed the three different perspectives of how they were reacting. Like, I think his name is, like, I don't know how you pronounce it, Rain, like Rin, whatever, Reen, something like that. However you pronounce his name, he was like all about the fame and all about the glory. Like he took every opportunity he had. He was boasting in it. Like he loved being seen as a hero. He loved the attention.
His girlfriend loved the attention.
Yeah, his girlfriend also loved the attention. He just like loved showing off who he was and what he did. And then there's John. He was the Navy SEAL. I don't know if he's a SEAL, but the Navy soldier. He was, the best way to describe him, very nonchalant about it. It was almost like he wanted to be neutral between him and like the army guy, and no, he was Marine, the Marine guy, and Ira, because like I don't know, like they would constantly fight because Ira's having breakdowns over being a hero, rightfully so. Well, I'm just gonna call him Renee. I don't know how you pronounce his name. I'll just the Marine guy. Well, the Marine guy was like really enjoying the fame and glory, so it was like a big battle between them. While John was just very neutral. He didn't really like. There wasn't really many flashbacks to him either. He was just kind of there, and he was just kind of taking it all in and yada yada. Some things I like to mention, like I said before, all of Ira's breakdowns and just how his life came to be. Like towards the end, like he was never really successful. He was never really happy. Like he didn't want to be put in the spotlight, and he ended up in the spotlight, and it like greatly affected him his whole life. Like I think what that movie showed the best. I don't know if I'd fit it into this category, but what it showed the best was just the after effects of
I
war.
think like my favorite scene in the entire movie was when Ira breaks down. I forgot his name. Hank, I think Hank's mom. When he breaks down in Hank's mom's arms, it's like they don't know each other, but they both loved Hank.
Yeah.
And I think that was like my favorite part.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, the other people were like, he was making a scene or something, so they didn't like it, but I thought it was the best part. Okay, so for Flags of Our Father, if we would rank them last, for me it was just very hard to follow the storyline and the three main characters. I only could follow Ira, honestly. I didn't even know the other guys' names. Yeah, I really liked Ira's arc. I think that it did a really good job showing the most realistic and common outcome for a situation like that, and like guilt from war. Okay, so to add on to that, I did enjoy that they showed more than just how Ira coped, like through alcohol, through grieving, and they showed Reen, they showed him taking the opportunity to be successful in life, even if he did feel that guilt still. I think that I like that they showed that. And they used being the title hero as his benefit. I also really enjoyed that the main focus wasn't the fighting in the war, but it was like how the other movies showed, but it was the outcome after the war and the dangers of labeling people as heroes. I also really enjoyed the ending where it showed the father who lived his life as like a hero of war and raised his kids, but he regretted how he raised his kids on his deathbed, and his son understood and like still thought he was a good father, and I thought that part really hit hard.
I did really like that. Okay, on to our fourth movie. You gotta hear me out a little bit because I went on a whim here, so you have to hear me out on this one. It's not gonna make sense for a little bit, but I swear I thought about this. Okay, for my fourth movie, I chose Forrest Gump. I chose it because it shows nationalism in like a really interesting way. Like Forrest Gump, he ends up going to war. I believe he's in the Vietnam War. I haven't seen this movie in like a few years, but I believe he's in the Vietnam War, and he's kind of like the ideal soldier. Now, obviously, Forrest Gump, the whole storyline is not about him being in war. There's just like moments of him being in war, but that's not what it's all about. But when he is in war, he's kind of like the ideal soldier. Like there's like scenes where he's like perfectly putting his gun together. He's cleaning his gun. He's shining his shoes. Like he's making like he's doing all of these very ideal soldier things to the point where he even like gets to meet the president. He gets a medal of honor for his work, and the whole time it's not that he doesn't really like think that he's a soldier, like not a soldier, a hero. He just doesn't realize how much of a hero that he actually is. Like he saves, like there's multiple scenes where he's saving people's lives, where he's like connected to his friends, and I think this would be an interesting movie to include because it doesn't exactly go along with the other movies, but it's a little bit lighter of war. I feel like war is a very strong topic to go over, and it can be very traumatizing for people who have had family members who like experience stuff like that. So I feel like throwing in a movie that's a little bit lighter for other people to like see how it is could be different. It definitely might be a little confusing to like write notes because it's not all about war, but I definitely think it puts a different perspective on being a soldier without realizing you're being a soldier. Okay, so this entire unit was strongly about nationalism. Like every bit of it was about nationalism. However, what I found interesting was that all three movies showed it differently. So for Flags, it showed nationalism through like the country. Like it wasn't necessarily like the soldiers were joining war because of that. It was like the hope that people felt about war, and when they saw that picture, it brought like extreme patriotism, that's what I meant, into their like life because like these were the people that were keeping them alive and were like getting the war, and it showed it like there was bond towards, there were meetings, conferences, speeches, and just like overall like it was the whole country was like connected to these groups of heroes. And then it didn't really just show that nationalism was all about like joining a war and like why people join it. It could be about your country too. While Letters and All Quiet on the Western Front like showed aspects of nationalism in its soldiers, but it also showed it differently there too. Like All Quiet shows nationalism in the aspect of like joining war. and it showed like the beginning where they're like in like that big like meeting like stairway, and they're like chanting because like these are the future of their nation. And so I thought that was interesting. And then Letters shows nationalism and the aspect of like dying for honor and dying for your country. Like it wasn't about joining, or like it was like actually once you were in it, like surviving and fighting for your country.
It didn't show people joining because they wanted to.
Yeah.
It showed them being recruited.
Yeah.
And it was like an honor for their the woman and the family, for their family members to be recruited and serve the emperor and stuff.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting how, though it was all about nationalism, all three were able to show it in different ways. And even if you included Forrest Gump, like it could also show it in a different way. This recording had a lot of talking in it, so here's the re-recording of conclusion that Anya previously did, but now I'm going to re-record. We would rank the movies, first being Letters to Iwo Jima. It showed clear nationalism. It was easy to follow the individual storylines and connect to the characters, and there's just very small little details that made the movie really good. Second, we'd say All Quiet on the Western Front, because it showed the real sides of war and actually like being on the battlefield. However, it was still a little difficult to track the characters at times, but overall it was still a good movie. And then third, Flags of Our Fathers, because it's difficult to remember the characters, but it was really good to include because it showed like, though a war was still like going on, like it showed what it's like after, kinda, since they were taken out, and it just like showed like what type of guilt people have to deal with when they're seen as heroes. Overall, this is a really good unit to include because it's always good to work on humanizing all sides of war and conflict. War is a very like common thing, as bad as that is. It is so around us constantly, even not war, but just conflict in general is constantly around us. So it's always good to humanize both sides of anything like that, to just truly see from their perspective why it's happening. And showing the foreign movies, showing specifically the foreign ones, are really good because it does a really good job of showing, one, how stupid war is, two, how extreme nationalism is, and three, just like seeing a different side that we may have not considered before. And especially if we're looking at like our recent history, like ours and other countries, it's very like eye-opening. So this is the end of episode 2. Shout out to our favorite Patreon member, Teddy. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please give us an A.